Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, we're going to have our popular financial literacy update, then we're going to talk a little bit about state employees and pay, and following that, the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau is in the house. We're going to talk about carbon trading credits. What's that all about? Stay with us, and you'll find out following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, in the shameless self-promotion agenda, let me say, we're #1 in our time spot. We beat on Sunday mornings in WGAL, Fox News Sunday, this week with George Stephanopoulos, and Face the Nation, and it's all about you, not about me, and about the people sitting across from me. Sitting across from me, as often is the case, is Mike Wishnow. He's the Senior VP with the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association, and Laura Huggins, she's the Youth Ambassador, I got that out, with the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Welcome, both of you.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
All right, now look, we're going to get into, I want to talk about this business with state employees and their money, their salaries, what's going to happen. But before I do that, Laura, I want to turn to you and talk a little bit about this Youth Ambassador program that you run. Why is it important for the Credit Union Association to have a Youth Ambassador program in this day and age? Come on.
Okay, well, as you know, Gen Y needs to be educated on, they need to be financially literate, as complex as it is out there today. Right. So what the Youth Ambassador really does is bring awareness to youth about credit unions as a lower cost, lower fee alternative for young consumers and really consumers of any age. And I think that's really the importance of the program.
Yeah, but you also, and Michael has been on this program now for years and years, and it's one of the things that we really have tried to emphasize is you've gotten into things like how much debt you should take, about credit card use, about how to make, not so much what instruments to invest in, but dealing with wise financial management. What do you do in that regard?
As Youth Ambassador?
Yeah.
Really, I act as a liaison between the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association and youth. Right. And I really try to bridge the gap there and educate them on...
But these are the kinds of programs that your various credit unions are participating in. And Michael, don't you also, you have some deals with school districts, they're continuing, I presume?
Absolutely, absolutely. What Laura did was she won a contest among 13 chapter winners to represent Pennsylvania's credit unions as Youth Ambassador. And she embodies what today's consumer is. She's young, she's savvy, and the kids today in the schools can look to someone like Laura and say, hey, that could be me in a few years.
Well, what did you learn in the process of doing this? I mean, I presume now you're going to be, hopefully now, you know, you can help guys like Michael have a sense about what you should need to learn, right?
That's right.
But what is it that you think you've gotten out of this that really matters?
Oh gosh, Terry, I learned a lot. I especially learned a lot about how uneducated youth are about their finances. They receive these credit card offers and they think it's free money, and I've known people who have thought that way, and it's really opened my eyes, you know, as to the need that's out there for this financial education.
Well, the program that when you came on here a couple years ago and we were talking about the relationship with school districts, you talked about expanding the program. Has that expansion taken place? Are you content with that?
Content. I'm not content until we're in all 501 school districts, I'll be honest with you. That said, in a relatively short period of time, about 3.5 years, we're in 225 of the 501 school districts. So I'm halfway content. How's that?
Halfway content. All right. Let's go back to your situation. You had to participate in a contest, correct?
Yes.
How many, and the ages here, my sheet says 17 to 25?
Yes, men and women 17 to 25 years of age.
And what did you have to do to compete?
Well, I had to take an extensive test on credit union knowledge.
Okay.
And I also had one-on-one interviews with judges so that we could be tested on our personality, charisma. And then last but certainly not least, there was a speech on credit unions specifically related to youth.
So will you go around the state giving speeches to other credit unions and or other groups? I mean, what about going to, Rotary clubs and Sertoma clubs? And I get a lot of requests to do those. They don't pay you, I have to tell you right now. You're not going to get paid, but, I mean, they're worthwhile organizations. They do a lot to help communities, as you know. Are we going to do a lot of the volunteering in that sense as well? Or you're going to have to get him to get you some of these gigs, right? Yeah,
Mike, you have to get me set up. I'll certainly be going around as speaking engagements rise and talking about this important issue. I'm going to be representing Pennsylvania credit unions at the National Youth Involvement Board annual conference in Arizona. As of right now, nothing set up with Rotary clubs and such. But
well, they'll watch this program. They're always looking for people. Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about this other aspect in public employees not being, they're being paid, but July 17th is the big date. After that, they're not going to be paid. What's going to happen with that, and what are credit unions and some banks doing about it? All of that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We're talking with Laura Huggins and Mike Wishnow from the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. We're going to switch gears now. July 17th is a pretty big date. After that date, Michael, state employees, some will get partial payment, some will get no payment. They won't be furloughed, they'll be on the job, but they will not be paid until the budget crisis is resolved. Put another way, until the legislature adopts something of a budget, appropriates some money, and the governor says yes to it. But in the meantime, those employees, 78,000 is the number I hear. Now, how are credit unions and banks, I know you speak for credit unions, how are you all assisting those employees during what could be a pretty tumultuous time in their life in the next couple of years, the next couple of weeks?
Absolutely. Credit unions have a history of being there for their members. And a number of credit unions, I have about a dozen, are doing some form of special loan to get state employees through whatever this period ultimately becomes. The governor had a press conference along with PSECU, the State Employees Credit Union, and they're offering a 0% rate for folks that qualify. There are several other credit unions offering 0%. Right. Some are offering to suspend payments without interest. Some are offering extremely low interest loans. Some are offering financial counseling. And of course, for those state employees that may be extremely credit challenged, we have our Better Choice loan, which we've talked about on this program, which is sort of a payday loan alternative.
Yeah, that sort of surprises me because, as one way to resolve it, you'd think they'd want to put a lot of pressure. I don't think anybody wants anyone furloughed or not without pay. Employees didn't create this problem.
Right. Correct. Correct.
And let's get that out.
And I know Laura at Belco.
You're Belco.
Yeah. You're doing stuff.
You're one of the credit unions involved in it. What's that about?
Yes, Belco was also offering an option for state employees during this difficult time, including a 0% loan, because there are members as well, and as always, we want to serve.
How do you beat a 0% loan?
You don't.
Even I can't figure out how to do that. Go ahead. I interrupted you. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's just that state employees are members as well, and we're here to serve our members. Yeah. So we definitely want to do all we can.
Yeah, I mean, this could go on for a considerable period of time. I mean, there are estimates about end of July and into August, into September. And so would a state employee have to join? I presume you'd have to become a member or if some banks are in it as well, take out an account? I mean, is that...
Sure. The state employee would have to become a member of any one of the almost a dozen credit unions that we're aware of that are offering a special program. Yeah. And frankly, the credit unions are interested in the long-term relationship.
Sure.
So that's how they can offer the 0%.
So, Laura, look, I mean, you're doing it because you want to serve people, obviously, but you're doing it because it may be helpful. I mean, these aren't mutually exclusive, to help people and then, in effect, to have them become, participants in your programs as well, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
It's truly a relationship.
Yeah.
We want to be our members' credit union for life.
All right, there we have our financial literacy update for this month. Coming up, Pennsylvania Farm Bureau, we're going to talk about carbon credit program. Now, you may not know what that's about. I don't know much about it, but man, we got the guy who's going to tell us all about that coming up after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, Gary Swan, he's been on the program before. He's with the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau. He's here sitting across from me. There he is. Gary, before we get into the carbon credit program, I want to talk to you about two other things that I think are pretty important for our viewers to get a sense about. One of them has to do with H1N1 and this sort of fear about pork. It's not a big deal, but talk a little bit about pork is safe to eat. Why is the Farm Bureau, why have you put out some advisories about it and releases about it? What's your concern there?
Terry, by the way, thank you for having me back on the program.
Welcome anytime.
When this virus broke in late April, it was called swine flu,
swine flu,
unfortunately, and that was because this swine originally, was an incubator of this, but the fact of the matter is that this is not spread directly from pork products. It's spread human to human. It is not tied to the pork industry. And our concern was that this would become another situation like with avian flu 5 years ago. Remember the talk about that pandemic? That set the poultry industry in an economic tailspin for almost a year. We have signs that the pork industry is suffering as much as maybe $400 million loss nationwide already. So it's just important for us to reach out to consumers.
Now, it's a big industry in our state.
It's ninth largest among all states in Pennsylvania. Okay. And we just wanted to reach out and educate and enlighten the consumers, knowing that H1N1 swine virus cannot be taken
so we don't
from
want to
eating
devastate.
pork.
We don't want to devastate the industry. That's the first point,
correct?
Right? And the second point is it's safe to eat. The third point, I think, would be that it's important for jobs.
It is important for jobs. As most folks know, agriculture is our largest overall industry.
And I want to stop you right here, because we don't talk about that enough. I mean, about how important agriculture, we think of us as an industrial state. We think of us as, Pittsburgh and Philly on either end of the state. And we have, one of the oldest populations, but one of the statistics about employment and output, agriculture doesn't get mentioned enough. So repeat that.
Well, we have the largest, industry overall. Nearly $5 billion produced on the farms, but that generates into this huge food industry. Yep. We have one of the largest processing industries in America, and it's said that 1 out of 7 jobs in Pennsylvania starts with farm production.
All right. Now, as a segue away from the pork industry, let's talk a little bit about dairy. I know that similarly, because we're a big agricultural state, we have a big dairy industry with a lot of dairy farms, and you have some concerns about
what this environment could mean to the dairy industry?
Well, unfortunately, after a couple of good years for the dairy industry, they came out of about a 12-year economic depression. The last 2 years have been pretty good for dairy farmers. And then we have this global collapse around the world, which actually means that some of these other countries that were buying milk products, like Japan and India and China, have cut back, and so our dairy farmers in the last 5 months are receiving 40% less for their milk than they did in December. On a 70-cow farm, that's about $11,000 less a month, and we've got the 5th largest dairy industry in the country.
I'm glad you're talking about this. I haven't heard. I mean, maybe it's me. I mean, I think I read a lot. I pay a lot of attention to what's going on in the state, but that news just has not hit home. And I live in Lancaster County, I guess the largest county for agricultural output in the state. We have,
and one of the largest in the nation.
And yeah, but that's not been widely
stories are beginning to be written about it, and we're hoping and praying that this industry will turn around. Bear in mind, farmers don't get to set the price of milk; the government does it. So they are not in control of the situation. It's not just the Commonwealth that's got a serious economic problem; it's a large part of the agricultural industry.
And it's a nationwide. And to some extent, it's also part of what we call the global economy, right?
Absolutely. Interestingly, the dairy problem was not created by the home mortgage market. It was created by economic factors around the world.
So we often think about global finances, but I don't know that we think as much about global agriculture as we should,
and
right?
it's an illustration of how much of our farm products are exported around the world.
Truth in advertising, I said we were going to talk about the carbon credit program. That's going to come up right after
this commercial break.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Penn Future, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy. And by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program with Gary Swan. He's with the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau. We're talking about a variety of things. We're going to talk now about carbon credit trading programs. I tell you, I read the information that you sent, and I know a little bit about it. But first of all, what is carbon credit trading in the most elementary form?
Most of your viewers would probably know that plants capture CO2.
Okay.
CO2 is from the atmosphere turned into plants and rootstock, and therefore it becomes part of the soil. Agriculture wants very much to be part of environmental solutions, and when we can do that, it's a win-win, particularly when we can do it working with the private sector. So here's what's going on. In Pennsylvania, we introduced a voluntary, private sector-based program a few months ago in 8 pilot counties, saying to agriculture, one particular practice, which is no-till agriculture. What does that mean? Back on my home farm, the typical plow, went deep into the earth. No-till agriculture, of which we have more than 50% of our cropland, Terry, in Pennsylvania being no-tilled, does not disrupt the soil. Therefore, you don't have carbon leaving the soil into the atmosphere. So we have come up with a program, and this was started in other parts of the country, where farmers can commit their land to this practice for a number of years.
To no-till.
To no-till.
So that
earn credits. And then those credits can be bought by business, industry, and utilities. So the perfect program for us is agriculture producing carbon credits and industry and business that want to buy offsets, buying them from farmers.
All right. Let me make sure I understand this. So by using no-till, which means you don't dig deep into the ground, you earn these carbon credits, which then companies that produce more carbon can buy from you, and as a result of that, they get a tax credit, or
they would offset some of their environmental mitigations,
okay,
much like the so-called cap and trade program that's been discussed. But that's a government program. The beauty of this in Pennsylvania, this is a private sector-based voluntary program.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I noticed again in some of the information that you sent me. Look, you're talking to a poor political scientist here. I mean, you're at about my level of understanding, but this is very good, and it's helpful. Is carbon trading new?
The Iowa Farm Bureau introduced it 5 years ago.
Okay,
and
so it is relatively new.
They have about 2 million acres under commitment of trading. We've launched a pilot project in 8 counties, expect to be taking it in other places in Pennsylvania very soon. We have about 10,000 acres committed already, which is really a drop in the bucket. But it is a way of agriculture to learn about this, to engage, and to help bring some new revenues on the farm to support those environmental practices.
Are you going to coordinate, I mean, okay, so let's say I'm a farmer and I agree to this no-till. How do I know who to sell this?
They go to, we're partnering with the Global Emissions Exchange.
Okay.
It is a website platform. They go register their acreage. This is a program with high protocols. There is record keeping on the farms to show that this is actually occurring.
Now, how much carbon can be saved, if that's the correct way? I mean, I would assume in Pennsylvania, we just had this discussion about agriculture.
We have 7 million acres of cropland in Pennsylvania.
7 million acres. Now, how are all the acreage eligible in a sense? By that I mean, will it work the no-till or
only
some?
Those acres that are under certain kinds of conservation practices like no-till. We also have a statewide program right now that is earning credits for the use of biodiesel fuel on farms, and that program is available right now.
So if you had it like on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being the most, this would be a significant carbon saving, with 1 or 2 being little, where would you rate this potential for this?
Long term, probably halfway along the scale. It's a little early to really project how quickly agriculture will take on to this. I must say that our farmers that have shown up at all of our meetings, our members, by the way, they asked for this through their policy process of the Farm Bureau. So we think that this is a work in progress, but it is a way where agriculture can again contribute to environmental mitigation and at the same time bring a little more revenue to the farm to help with these practices.
All right, hey, I want to thank you. This was a learning of this professor learned something from you. This is pretty fascinating stuff, and why don't you come back sometime and fill us in and let us know about where it all stands. All right, thanks again.
Thank you, Terry.
We'll see you next week for another edition, and as always, you all stay well.